Hello, this is an introduction to the wonderful Adventures of Niles by Selma Lagerlöf, a Swedish writer. Actually, she is the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, which she was awarded in 1909. I am reading her book, The Wonderful Adventures of Niles, which is a children's book that was published in 1907. Um, it's here. Let me see if I can find it. This is actually probably is her most famous book. She was asked by the National Teachers Association to write a geography book for children. She wrote Niels Holgersson Unterbas Resai Gemma Savrij, which I'm sure I just butchered, The Wonderful Adventures of Niles, a novel about a boy from the southernmost part of Sweden who has been shrunk to the size of a thumb and who traveled on the back of a goose across the country. Lagerlöf mixed historical and geographical facts about the provinces of Sweden with tales of the boy's adventures, detailing how he managed to return home and restore it to his normal size. The novel is one of Lagerlöf's most well-known books and has been translated into more than 30 languages. Why I picked this as my reading out loud thing is it comes in my 1901 project of reading stuff from 1890 to 1910. It fits within that. It is actually a book that's not originally published in English, which is what I've been trying. I've been reading a lot of English and a lot of American and the odd fucking weird Canadian book. We won't go into that right now. Um, this one was translated by Velma Swanson Howard in 1913, I believe, because The Adventures of Niles was actually first published as the Wonderful Adventures of Niles in 1907 and The Further Adventures of Niles in 1911. That these are actually, it's probably a combination of the two published together in English as The Wonderful Adventures of Niles. The reason I've picked this one is during our Christmas season, we were doing this Advent calendar, which had little pictures, and you were, according to the picture, tiny pictures, you're supposed to try and guess what bit of literature. Oftentimes children's literature, but sometimes Moby Dick was in there, I think, and other things. Was this book, which I had never heard of, called The Wonderful Adventures of Niles. And of course, hey, I went, it's in my time period. And it's actually published, it's written by somebody who was obviously quite highly esteemed literarily, winning the Nobel Prize in Literature, of course, Swedish. So, obviously a little bit closer to the center of power there. So yeah, I thought that would be interesting to do. She first published her first novel in the age of 33. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1914. She was the first woman to be granted membership in the Swedish Academy. And seems to have been she is somebody who was like she used the language reform of the time. There was definitely some kind of a language reform thing going on in the Norwegian countries around that time. I do not know of, but seems to have been important part of her writing. Yeah, and obviously getting the National Teachers Association to actually ask her to write this book is interesting. It's funny. It's one of these things where she's written a book called Jerusalem, which seemed to be, which is acclaimed by critics who began to compare to Homer and Shakespeare. Though it's not a book that obviously has traveled much, at least in time. I don't know if it's still quite highly esteemed in Sweden itself, which was inspired by the American colony in Jerusalem. So it'll be interesting to see if I'm depending on how much I like this, I might take up Jerusalem as another further reading, because it's also been and translated into English, so ignoramus like myself can read it. So yeah, The Wonderful Adventures of Niles. I mean, I could hold up this, but it's just the boring Project Gutenberg cover, which, hey, all hail to Project Gutenberg, a great source for free literature. And if you're not fussed by what translation you're getting, free translations of literature as well. So yes, I am going to start that. Apparently, the one thing to note for this translation into English is that one of the thing is that the note here from the translator is some of the purely geographic matter in the Swedish original of the Further Adventures of Niles has been eliminated from the English version. The author has rendered valuable assistance in cutting certain chapters and abridging others. Also, with the author's approval, cuts have been made where the descriptive matter was merely of local interest, but the story itself is intact, and that's VSH, the translator. So it's funny that something that she was commissioned to do to help Swedish children learn about the literature of Sweden. It sounds like it's been excised, has been excised from the book. You know, to write a geographic book for children. It's like, okay, but if I'm going to sell this to other places in the world, we'll pull out the geographic stuff because nobody outside of Sweden is maybe either interested in it or is maybe just not topical to children elsewhere where to be learning details about Swedish geography. So I will remain probably ignorant of much of Swedish geography, even having read out loud The Wonderful Adventures of Niles. All right, so that's coming now.